right, everyone, welcome to the Pave Your Path podcast. We are here with BobbyGeneCail. He is a drummer extraordinaire. The other one's okay too.
Wrong sign.
27. He's hilarious. He's a very talented musician, incredible drummer, and he paves his own path for sure. If he was a nutshell and if you found him on the street, he would be the most eccentric nutshell you've ever seen. So welcome, Bobby, and thanks for being here to do this interview.
Hey, thank you. And for a second, I thought you were talking about yourself there. That's crazy.
So tell me, the first question I want to ask you is, I did a call for spooky people, for spooky, weird, out there, people who consider themselves off the beaten path people, and you said, that's me. So tell me a little bit about that. What do you consider, why do you identify with that, those sorts of labels or descriptions?
Yeah, to be honest, I think living in this world or just in society, when you're being yourself to the fullest that you can possibly be, I think that tends to scare people. So it's tough being surrounded by people who, I mean, I'm not necessarily calling them fakes or anything, but they have like a facade. They have like this veil and this mask, and they're not really revealing themselves or being down to earth really. So to be yourself in a society that has a lot of people that's not themselves is you tend to be or come off as scary or weird or spooky.
I get you. I really like that answer. So first, actually, I have two follow-up questions to that. The first is, how do you stay true to yourself? Have you always been? Was there a time when you weren't and a time when you started to be? Or have you always just been genuinely you? And what's that been like? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think it's honestly a gradual progression. At least it was for me growing up. You're born into, your parents' world pretty much, or if you're not born with both your parents or whomever was there at birth, you're born into this way of life, what to think, what to believe, what to listen to. And I think as you start getting older and you become a quote unquote adult, which I'm not sure I am still, like this interview is called, you pave your own path, you pave your own way, you do what you want or what you like, what you enjoy. And I think the people that are not themselves most of the time, I think they eventually find time to be themselves. So I guess to answer your question, ultimately, it did take some time. And I would say the teenage years was the median of me figuring out who I was. And of course, picking up an instrument and identifying with the culture and all that good stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah. I like, yeah, these are amazing answers. And so.
Sound effects.
Yes. And so you already spoke to, throw in your own sound effects. That was perfect.
What?
And so you actually already spoke to the second follow-up question I had, which was,
Huh? Because I am metaphysical.
Yes, you're psychic. You knew. But which was a
Bobby Thomas.
But that was about, the other side, the flip side to that. Here you are following your path. You say it took a process, but now you're at a point where you're just doing your thing to the fullest. And then the other piece to that was like, well, so what do you observe in people who aren't doing that? And I know that you already said, eventually they probably figure out how to do that. But in your daily life, when you say you're surrounded by people who don't do that, who aren't true to themselves, what clues you into that's the case with somebody? Like, how can you tell if somebody is or isn't being authentic? Or do you think, can you?
Yeah, I definitely can, and I don't in any way, shape, or form mean to come off or sound. I'm not being arrogant, but I think what we all need is to really to rely on or to trust our intuition really with vibes and with energy. As cheesy or as corny as it may sound, energy doesn't lie, of course, and when you feel something is out of place or not right or just deviated, really, I think that's an indication that somebody's not being fair with themselves. So vibes, really, just intuition.
Vibes, just feeling.
Yeah,
yes, that's important. I think that's something that we all have, but we've covered up. So
covered up, don't trust.
True.
Dismiss.
Yeah. So what does it look like for you when you're being fully authentic to yourself and paving your path? What does that look like for you nowadays? Like, what do your days usually consist of, or what does your life path usually consist of?
Well, that's a pretty awesome question, because this is something that, ironically, and you just told me about this interview not too long ago, which is total coinkydink. But the way I see it is, a lot of people that, of course, have so to speak, a 9-to-5, they're very adamant about their 9-to-5, and I don't blame them whatsoever. But the way I see it, my perspective on things, is it's flipped, it's reversed. My passion is, of course, in this case, drumming. That's what I see and I view as my 9-to-5, and what I take on as my 9-to-5. Yeah, I do have a 9-to-5 that I go to, and show up in the morning, leave in the afternoon. But when it comes down to my passion, that's the 9-to-5 that I really consider as my profession, in a sense, which is drumming. So not to say I take my job lightly, but I think any chance that I get, any glimpse of time, I've gotten a good grasp or a concept on like the veracity of time. So any chance I get before the day, my 15-minute breaks, lunch, after work, in the middle of the fucking night, I wake up from a nightmare or whatever, I give it my all and then some to really to manifest my dreams, and to make something happen, really. So that's my take or perspective or approach on that. So.
That's amazing. I love that. And is that something that you've always practiced, or is that something more recent?
No, this actually I inhabited, or I developed when I moved out of my parents' house several years ago, and that's when I realized, that's when I got a better grasp of time, really. I think we were talking about earlier, growing up and learning to become yourself and stuff. I hope that, I don't think everybody does this, but I hope that at some point in our lives, we figure out, or we get the gist of time and what a second does, what a minute does, what an hour does. So I just really, I got a gist of, or a good grasp of time, and I wasn't like that before. I think it was an age or a maturity thing, but I wasn't always like that. So it really came with moving out, moving on my own, living on my own, and saying, hey, what the hell do I do with my time now? Oh, that's right, I've got this dream, this passion, so I'm gonna do what it takes. Yeah, I didn't always have that, but it took living on my own to understand or get a better grasp on things. Yeah. Really, the balance between your breadwinning and your passion, and yes. how they conflict, and and stuff. So.
Thank you. That's awesome. So I have 2 follow-up questions to that. I love these answers. They're so profound. So much wisdom. All these. Oh. What?
No, I was just gonna say, like, there's this gentleman here in the gym where I'm sitting at, and I'm totally being my 100% self in front of him. So just thought I'd let you know.
I love that. Yes. And that's not, props to you, because that's not actually easy. Like you said, a lot of people struggle with that, and it's for a lot of reasons, a lot of programming, a lot of societal reasons, but props to you.
Deconstruct likewise. I feel like we're on the same wavelength. So.
Yay. So to follow up to that, before you got this like grasp of time and how to use your time the way that best serves you, what was the difference before? Like, what did you used to do with your time, or what do you think that big difference was?
I think the factor or the big difference really was I grew up, so I basically started playing drums when I was about 12 or 13. I immediately joined a band when I was 12 or 13. So you can already imagine I was already exposed to bars and clubs and that sort of environment. So automatically a part or involved with the quote unquote, party life or party scene. And really it was more of I guess a subconscious battle, so to speak, with not letting that lifestyle take over me. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I lots of good times, sometimes too many. But I just it's something you can't let get a hold of you really, and that goes for anything, whether it's chocolate at the grocery store, Doritos, whatever the fuck. You just can't.
Takis.
My fave hashtag. Check
Takis.
in now.
Fuego.
Fuego, despacito. Yeah, just not letting something consume you really, and for me the factor was that lifestyle of partying. So I've been in several bands, and I'd say the majority of my band members, if not all of them that I've been a part of, they've partied, and everybody just like a lot of people like to party. So to not let that consume me, it was a battle for sure. So I think that was a factor. I'm going to say, to be honest, and this again comes with the age and maturity thing. If I had I guess I matured when I did, but if I had matured sooner, I would have, said, forget partying, forget being distracted with any other miscellaneous things. And I would have hit it full throttle since I was, I don't know, age of 4, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way, So I guess I learned better sooner than too late or whatever. So
True. I feel that. I feel that. And plus, sometimes there's other lessons that need to be learned that aren't learned through a different path. So,
yeah.
Plus, you're still young. I feel like we're young, and I feel like as we're approaching 30, there's this like tendency to feel like, oh my God, we're so old. But in the grand scheme of things, we've only not been children essentially for like 10 years. So that's pretty young, I think.
Yeah. And somebody told me yesterday, you're only as old as you feel. And I was like, damn, I just got off the treadmill. I feel like I'm 95. So there you go. I'm 95.
You're like, you're not helping me. So then now moving forward, or back to the now, where drumming has been a huge part of your life and you've started to incorporate it as into your life as much as possible. Why drumming? Like, what is it about drumming what does it add to your life, and what is it that you love about it, and why is that a priority for you?
Okay, well, it might be as primitive as my heartbeat if I want to get all deep and philosophical, but my parents just told me when I was a little however the hell I was, I don't know, 2 or 3, I was banging on things, hitting pots and pans, and grabbing things and hitting them, and just hitting things really. So that's probably where it came from. And then I actually tried playing guitar first when I was about 11 or 12, and my dad bought me a guitar from the pawn shop, and I and it's still well, I'll tell you a little story later, but I couldn't get I didn't have it didn't feel right. Basically, the coordination to go ahead and strum or pluck between the strings, at least at the age of 11, didn't feel right. And then I guess, I don't know, my father had been playing guitar for a while, and he bought a drum set eventually. He said, hey, try this out. And so I tried it, and it stuck. But I think my grandmother bought me my first drum, and yeah, rest in peace. I miss her. But she bought. I think she beat my dad to it. Ha. she bought me a drum for grade school, for elementary school band, and I fell in love really, and it's some people ask like the question you just asked, and sometimes I feel like it's a nervous tendency. Other times it feels like a therapy or it's therapeutic, but it's just something that really transcends through physical and through flesh, and I just really there's not enough words really to I guess express my love for it, but yeah, that's been doing it for a while, and I'm married to it for till existence does us apart, to my love forever for talking nonsense out of my ass about my love for drumming. I started to go off on a tangent because like I have so much love for it. I'm like, I don't even know what this is. No, I just love.
Yeah, that's beautiful. But I love that you do make it a point to make it a priority in your life, because it can be so easy to get distracted by all these things. And like you spoke to earlier, like make your 9 to 5 like such a priority that it kind of like consumes you. And that happens to a lot of people for different reasons. Sometimes you really just do have to like pay the bills.
People have kids.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
But sorry to intervene or interject, but I was literally, this is so crazy. I was just talking to my friend about this before I got on the chat with you. I was telling him if I ever had kids, but that's something I've always, not always, but recently wouldn't mind having or being a father of a child. But I was telling him if I ever had the responsibility of a kid or had children, I would still manage and find time to play, whether it was in a garage or on stage. So yeah, just wanted to throw it in there.
Yes, that's real. And so I mean, thank you for sharing all this, because I really do feel that there is a lot of like great pieces of wisdom in here. So I want to ask you about if you would be interested in sharing, like, what's one of the biggest challenges you've ever been through in your life, and how did you overcome it or get through it?
Yeah, I think obviously, okay, let's start from the basis of things. Really, I think where you're born in, or what position you're in, your predicament, really, I think people let that define them. And that's something I noticed and I realized, and I was lucky, I guess I had enough luck, or I lucked out enough to realize, whether or not my parents were, the most fortunate or the least fortunate. They just happened to not be the most fortunate of parents. But I think what made me believe and what kept me going was them being together. My parents are still together, and they stuck it out this long. And they didn't have much, and they weren't able to do a lot for me as financially, I guess, so to speak. But they did provide a lot of support and a lot of love, and I think that's what got me going. So I guess what I'm trying to say is don't let your environment, don't let your situation define you. There's always a way past that, really, and to break through those barriers. So the biggest, some obstacles or some big challenges for me, of course, were to be honest with you, going back to partying, to drinking and stuff, and getting into trouble and things like that. But it takes you to be at your lowest to realize, if I can be this low, I can be just as high in life, or at a high point in my life. So.
My God, I love that so much. It's like, God.
Partying really was the biggest thing. A lot of partying, sometimes women, and the environment would have been the third thing. But just the moral of the story, don't let your environment, don't let your situation, your predicament define you. Just break those barriers.
Yes, that's beautiful. That's awesome. And did you always, did your parents teach you that, or how did you realize that? When did you realize that? Or you're not sure? You just kind of.
No, I'm always sure, Athena. I think that's why you wanted to interview me. No,
Yes.
Hashtag arrogance. No, I'm one of the most humblest that you'll ever meet. But no, I was just thinking, this is so crazy, but I was just thinking this when I was on the treadmill before we chatted. My mom, one thing that things resonate with me in my head, like the resonation of an instrument or a drum or a sound. They really, that saying that words mean a lot. They sometimes verbal abuse is more, harming than physical abuse. So, and it goes to the other extreme of things. If it's very positive, wisdom, it can resonate just as much as well as effective. So, anyway, my mom said, she told me one time when I was young, she said, it doesn't cost, in Spanish, no cuesta soñar, so it doesn't cost a thing to dream. And what I want to tell everybody out there, whether you have $5, 5 cents, $5,000 in your pocket, the biggest thing really is what's your dream. And if you have only 5 cents to your name, $5, if you got the dream, all that needs to be done is the manifestation. So if you just apply yourself, that's all you need really in the mix of things. So that was my mom. She told me dreaming doesn't cost a thing. So I was like, really? It's free? I like free shit.
So you hung on to that.
Yeah, I hung on to that. Like, I'm a freeloader. Yeah, I'm going to dream all day. So,
I'm going to dream all day. Well, good. Yes.
Yeah. So that was cool. And then my father, he's a pretty big, laid-back, hippie type. Sometimes not too laid-back and sometimes really aggressive. But he's just a long-haired hippie, bluesman, old-school rocker guy. And he definitely had a lot of wisdom to share with me. And super supportive. Like I said, he may have not supported me entirely, but I don't really expect 110% from everybody at every time. So that's something that you come to learn or realize. So everything he did and he said, and he's the one that really he won a lot he kept the roof over our heads, and he was always there. I grew up in a generation where the dad wasn't there. So a lot of my friends they didn't have a dad sometimes, much less a mom or even both once in a while. But I think the fact that growing up in a generation where a lot of my friends didn't have their dad and I did, that was an inspiration for sure. And that alone, amongst all the crazy, quirky, funny, sometimes super motivating, sometimes kind of crazy, things he told me, I think the most inspiring thing was just him being there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So you're.
Is that on your script? I love that. You don't love it. You hate it. It's scripted.
Yeah, I love that. No, I just love that you got those things from your parents, and that you appreciated those things too, because not everybody would appreciate that either, So I really do love that.
Appreciation is really important, and that's one of the. It's all maybe not necessarily a melting pot, but it's like a salad really. There's a lot of components.
It's like a salad.
Yeah, it's just a really good salad, and you got to have tomatoes. You got to have, what have you. But yeah, there's a lot of different things in the mix, and a lot of important components to succeeding, to success.
Yes, awesome. So I guess I'm sure you have to go soon, but I have two more questions, I suppose.
I don't have to go. Yeah.
No? Okay. Well, my first question.
Like I do.
No.
I got a life, Bobby.
Get out of here. You're somewhere. You're at the gym. I'm just at my house. You have more of a life than me right now.
I am omnipresent. I'm everywhere.
So
mentally, I am everywhere.
Everywhere. So with what your mom said to you about dreaming and stuff, I mean, I think that's beautiful, and how you joked like, I'm gonna dream all day. I think that's great, but you go beyond dreaming. you do, because you are actually applying, you're like going after the things, you're finding how to incorporate it into your life as much as possible. So I think that's really great advice that you gave, but do you also have more advice about how to go from dreaming to, you know, because sometimes you could dream all day, but that's all you do, and then what happens? So do you have any advice about manifesting and actually
Yeah, for sure.
what the important pieces of that are?
For sure. And again, I'm not necessarily an expert, but this is just, through personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
But this world that we live in, and this goes back to ancient times really, just writing things down, scripture or just script in general, writing things down is a start. You know what I mean? So if you write a list down and you use resources from wherever it may come from, a friend, some sort of knowledge you gain from reading an article, whatever it may be, using those resources and just taking step by step is the most important thing. Direction is far more important than speed will ever be. So I think,
Ooh, you got some good quotes here. Sorry.
Hey, cliche to say, but
No, I love that.
Slow and steady like a turtle. Just really knock things out, one by one, really. And like I said, just resources. Just maybe an analogy would be, resources like natural resources. You need these things to do other things. So it's the key here is I guess an important part is a resource or resources to use to get to from point A to point B or whatever it may be. So I think writing things down, using effective or essential resources, and then going from there really. So also another thing too is there's always going to be a roadblock or a wall at some point. Finding a way around things. I think people doubt is something that comes into play, but I think people, they hit a wall and they're, you don't necessarily have to be super, or you might be super pessimistic and say, you know what, I thought I could do it, but I can't, and give up. But finding a way around things really, I guess, don't just think outside the box, climb out of it. So, well, I'll add to that because I don't have a beard. So what I lack in beard, I make up in wisdom. But what I lack in something, I make up in another. But okay, so an intelligent person will solve problems, but a really wise person avoids them. So if you come across a problem, you know what I mean, and it's a problem you can't solve or deal with, then avoid it. Of course, I'm not saying run away, avoid it, but avoid it in the sense of go around it, find a way around, or but you don't necessarily have to solve every roadblock, every wall, every you know what I mean. You can there's alternatives to things, really. So
awesome. And in your journey, as you're paving your path, what do you usually like focus on? Like, is it a balance of focusing on what's right in front of you and the long-term big dream you have, or how do you like usually get through things in a day, and where does your focus go in order to get around these obstacles, in order to carry out your dreams?
my focus goes to I think it's a really good question. Just myself, really. If I don't want to sound cheesy again or corny or anything, or woozy woozy goo boo juru, corny stuff, but just really love. I'm sorry, I was brought up in a world that they don't love, Athena. They don't love, but yeah, love yourself. Really, I think it just starts with loving yourself, and once you start to love yourself, I think everything else just falls into place, really. So just love yourself. Everything else falls into place, and yeah,
Awesome.
everything else just falls into place. Yeah.
Yes. So last
Yeah.
question for you. Last for reals.
That's cool.
So what is your current, you talk about like dreaming. What is your current dream? I know a lot of it is to do with drums, but like specifically, what's your like vision, either short term or long term?
Okay, well, let's do both then, if you have
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
But really, my short-term goal would be to be an actively touring musician. It doesn't really necessarily have to be touring. I think really, I mean, not only do I love music, but I'm a wanderlust type of dude, and I love traveling and seeing new places. Although I haven't been to many places, part of my short-term goal to either, whether it's touring with a band or even just backpacking and going to visit places. So that's my short-term thing. And of course, touring would, whether it's being signed to a label or not being signed to a label, it doesn't matter. Of course, being signed to a label, that would be another one of my short-term goals. But ultimately, I do want to travel. I want to see what's out there and what's not out there. Everybody talks about what's out there. What's not out there? Oh, shit. The pot of gold. Yeah. And then
it wasn't out there.
It wasn't out there. Then the long-term goal would be to really make, to revolutionize heavy music in general, really. You know, whether it's just, I mean, sometimes it's hard to do that when I was talking to my friend about this earlier. I'm used to being in 2 or 3 bands ever since I was 15 or whatever. And now, actually, you caught myself in a phase of my life where I'm not in a band. I'm like a free agent in the fucking football league.
Oh, you're not?
Hey,
I thought you were.
Oh, I was in like 20 bands and something happened, but I'm not in a band right now. But
everybody scoop this guy up right now.
No. Back to your question, I want to revolutionize not only heavy music, but I want to make a name for it. You know, not necessarily make a name for myself. If it's a name for myself, that's cool. But I just kind of leave some kind of mark on, this thing we call musical history or heavy metal, and just revolutionize and make give metal its more fuel to its fire, I guess you could say. So that's my long-term goal. And aside from music, long-term would just keep loving myself, keep growing, keep progressing as a human being. Maybe settle down one day, start a family. Partying gets tired, and I just want to party with maybe like 3 people and a cat, 4 dogs, and not 4 dogs. Maybe 1 dog and like a kitten and maybe like 2 turtles. But yeah,
because the turtles are gonna get there.
Yeah, slow and steady wins the race.
I just have to tell you this because it's random. Earlier this summer, I live right next to a creek. Okay. There was a dead cat in the creek, and there was like 5 turtles, and they're like all eating the cat. They're eating it.
Learn something every day. Damn, I didn't know turtles are down like that. I guess they do.
I didn't know turtles ate cats.
I didn't know they can. Is that like? Wow. Good thing I'm vegan.
But no, that's awesome. I love your
plant-based.
Plant-based. Go vegan. So no, but thanks for sharing your visions. Thanks for sharing your goals, all your wisdom. Now, BobbyGeneCail has a question for you all out there, and the question is: if you're consistently inconsistent, doesn't that make you consistent?
And not inconsistent?
And not inconsistent.
Because you're being consistent. Or is that just a paradox?
So what's your fascination with that question?
Paradox is really... like, okay. Somebody says, be different, man. And 10 people are like, okay, we'll all be different then. Then technically they're all simultaneously, being different. So
The same.
they're all the same, really. So I'm just so fascinated with paradoxes, really. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. So it's like be you, no matter what.
Yep.
Whether it's different, whether it's not, just be true to you, right?
Dang, took the words. Me quitaste las palabras de mi boca, Tina. I just wanted to speak Spanish because I don't know.
Yes. Do it. Spanglish.
Lo voy a
Represent.
hacer. No.
No Spanglish? No Spanglish?
You know what the first word in English I learned was?
What?
No. You know what the first Spanish word was?
Can I guess?
No. Yeah, that's how you know. That's how you're bilingual.
No.
Everybody's bilingual because they say no, and they're like, "Oh shit! I just learned a Spanish word."
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, any parting words? You've already given us so much, but
Not really parting words, but maybe parting words.
yeah, right. Let's get some parting words.
So here we go. I just want to end it with this. Partying doesn't necessarily mean drinking, smoking, sniffing things, or what have you. Partying can just mean having a high and a just a high spirit. So just go about, whether it's, and you don't have to, anybody watching or anybody who does watch this, you don't have to take this, or if you do, take it however you want to take it. But anything you do in life, just have a high spirit about it. Have a hope, high spirit. Whether you're, I don't know, walking to the store or driving your car, you know, energy is contagious. My accent is coming out. Whoa.
Yeah.
I was going to say contagious. You know, your actions, your energy, all of that, your demeanor really is contagious. So it's a snowball effect. You approach a thing one way. You know, let's say you approach something negative, your outcome is going to be negative. Your attitude's negative. You know, whatever the fuck you're doing at the time is going to be negative. So just have a really positive, high-spirited, you know, aura about yourself, and you'll be okay. So that's the party word that I had, or the partying words.
Yes. Parting words from BobbyGeneCail. And tell people where they can find you on social media.
Well, you could just type in BobbyGeneCail. You had to laugh, huh? BobbyGeneCail the third, who speaks, I guess, as much Spanish as I do English. I can read, write, and speak Spanish. That's crazy, huh?
Yeah, well, that's awesome.
I wish we can get into a conversation about, like, you know, being, you know, biracial and
do it,
Spanish.
dude. Come on, because honestly, I have all sorts of feelings about being mixed and shit, because it's rough sometimes. You don't belong anywhere, or you feel like you don't.
Yeah.
Everybody's always like, you're not us. You're that over there. So it's like, all right.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, social media, BobbyGeneCail, on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, preferably YouTube. That's where all my drumming material, my music material is. And but yeah, that's where to find me, BobbyGeneCail.
Awesome. Everybody follow this guy. Find his YouTube. I'll put the links below. Thank you, Bobby, so much. This has been really awesome. I'm glad to learn more about you. And I, for one, feel highly enlightened. I will live by your partying words.
I'm going to go jam out to Andy WK on my way home. All right, bro. We'll see you later.
All right. Thanks for your time.
I love you, girl. Take care.